And we are live.
A very good evening, friends. We are ecstatic this evening because two very eminent people are going to be in conversation. Mr. Biplab Dasgupta, eminent actor, theatre personality, is going to talk to author Shibu Kocheri on his book Faith and the Beloved. You are going to enjoy this session. Biplab Dasgupta has many interesting questions for the author on the book. So we are really looking forward to an enthralling session. So before I hand over to Biplab Da, let me quickly introduce the two speakers this evening. Biplab Dasgupta, an actor, writer, and director, is the Dean of Faculty in George Telegraph Film and Television Institute, communication consultant of an IT company called Ascendion. He has directed several documentary films for UNICEF, State Bank, Care India, British Oxygen, NABARD, etc. He has acted in award-winning Bengali films such as Gunami, Mayurokhi, Kahini, and has also acted in 3 international films. Biplab Dasgupta visited California as a cultural delegate of Rotary International. Thank you so much, Biplab Da, for being here this evening. As always, we look forward to your session with Shivu Kocheri. Kocheri C. Shivu, the best-selling and award-winning author of Men and Dreams in the Dhaluadhar, graduated from the prestigious National Defence Academy in 1981. He has served in the Indian Navy and commanded 2 warships. Post his retirement, he has executed hydroelectric projects in the Kaveri River Basin in Karnataka, Beas River Basin in Himachal, and Teesta River Basin in Sikkim. He holds a postgraduate degree in Defence Studies from Chennai University and an MA in English Literature from Pune University. Shivu has changed track from the snow-clad mountains to the blue oceans and has been associated with the setting up of a shipping company in India. Faith and the Beloved is his second book. Many of the characters in the novel are inspired from those whom he has encountered during his extensive travel. Kocheri C. Shivu was born in Kochi, Kangarpadi, and now lives in Bangalore with his wife and daughter. Thank you, Shivu, for being here. And I'm absolutely confident that the audience and the viewers are going to have a rollicking evening hearing the two of you in conversation. Thank you. Over to you, Biplab Da.
Thank you so much, Mona.
Thank
you so much, Mona.
Good evening. May I call you Shibu?
Of course, please do call me Shibu.
Okay, because I don't want to call you by your full name, because that will take a lot of time, because our time is very limited. So we would rather try to know a lot of things from you and the viewers who are watching. I do not know how many of you have read Faith and the Beloved and how many of read his Men and Dreams in Dhaluadhar. And when I read this book, I had a lot of intrigue, but fortunately, because of technology, today I have got an opportunity to interact with the author, which in our school days, in our college days, we didn't have. I mean, even if we wanted, we couldn't interact with the author we like, because it was not possible. So, and I personally feel that those who know about Shibu, who was in Navy, Indian Navy, and sort of did his education from Defense Academy, and then post-graduation he did English literature. I'm also a student of English literature. So I'm very intrigued that Navy, English literature, and then of course literature writing. So what really sort of was the kind of nucleus or the impetus that inspired you to hold your pen and pen such lovely stories?
To start with, actually, the writing in me goes back a long way to my school days, to the 70s.
Okay.
So, that was a very creative environment, and we studied in a school called Loyola School in Trivandrum. So we had a fabulous crowd of, let's say, creative minds, and writing was a passion which was sparked off from there. But of course, after my schooling, I joined the National Defense Academy, and thereafter, your complete orientation is towards being a career soldier. So the writing that I did in uniform was mostly about, let's say, warfare, strategy, tactics, anti-submarine warfare, torpedoes, missiles, and the works. During that time, I tried writing fiction and I found it difficult. So then I decided I must formally, educate myself into literature. And that was in 87 to 89 that I joined Pune University. When I was again back in National Defense Academy as the, what you call the on the staff. And I completed my postgraduate in literature with a clear intention that I would take up writing whenever the time permits. And in that service career, as a career soldier, it is very difficult to spare time to write fiction. Whatever you write is always related to service, and there was a whole lot of things to write. And another interesting aspect was that, when I was in the think tank of the Navy for about 4 years in Delhi. So there, one of the regular jobs that you should do is that, you come through weapon equipment, procurement, and, the future planning of the Navy, etc. There are, on a daily basis, there was a brief which used to go to the bureaucracy on, simplifying complex, technical aspects of torpedoes or anti-submarine warfare or sonar and things like that, to a decision maker who has to spend the money and justify to him that this is required and what is a fair price. So it was in many ways, start point of serious writing, because on one side, you know what you're doing. You're very well versed in, whatever your domain is, but to simplify it into 3 or 4 lines to a man who should take a decision on how much to spend on it and what is the, let's say, real value for money or bang for the buck, as they would see it, was a challenge initially, and then later on it is enjoyable, because it's a matter of putting together, selling a concept to the people who are decision makers, then getting them mired in the details. And if they get the concept clear, they're sharp people. The bureaucrats and the finance guys are very sharp. So once they understand the concept, it just sails through. So in many ways, the forerunners of the fiction started from those 3-4 years, where every day you should churn out maybe, let's say tons of paper, if I may do that, to the bureaucracy. And it was only after I left the Navy that I could take the time out to write my first book, because when you plan for so long to write, it does take a fair amount of time to come out with what you think is the first book. The first book took me 4 years to write, then followed another 1 year in editing. And this book took me about 2 years in writing, preparation, research before I could write the book. So writer has been there all through with me. I mean, fiction writing, of course, that took some time to come out.
Yeah, as you said that
always
seriously, when you left your job, or rather came out of the job, then you had time to sort of do research and come out with serious writing. But I would like to, the thing that is very intriguing to me, that in English literature, there are so many ages, like if start from the Anglo-Saxon to medieval to Jacobean, Elizabethan, Restoration, Augustan, Romantic, Victorian, Modern. And each, when we studied, we found that every author, every poet, every novelist, every playwright used to react to the socio-economic, cultural background of that particular period. And like Industrial Revolution affected the poets, John Keats, Wordsworth, they sought refuge in nature and wrote romantic poems. Now, in your case, when you started thinking about a plot, see, as we know that the word author in Latin is author, means suffering. So how much agony was there in your mind, which you wanted to sort of have a catharsis, and you wanted to sort of share with the readers, creating a kind of plot, how do you sort of, how did you sort of decide on the plot in these two books?
So the first book which I wrote was, of course, I had
More or
selected the
less
background
related
of
to Navy.
hydroelectric projects.
Yeah,
No, the
engineering,
first book was not related to Navy. It was towards engineering
hydroelectric.
and hydroelectric projects because I left the Navy and yeah, for about 12 years I was executing hydroelectric projects, which was completely different
Yes.
from what I did before, but very challenging. So the beauty there was that, you know, when you work with workers from all over India who come together for a particular project for 3 years or 4 years, there is a life which is very different. It's a kind of life on its own, with its own rules and regulations, and its own customs and traditions, its own norms. And what I will say is, you know, extraordinary life of ordinary people who execute such miraculous projects, which you only get to see. You never get to see, get to see the story of those people who worked on it and their challenges, and you know what risks they have taken, etc. So the first book, because I worked in that sector, I thought that story must be told. So the first book was set in the background of a hydroelectric project, where I've really gone out to the details of research in the life of the most ordinary worker in that kind of environment. Possibly, I think it's only one of its kind book, to my knowledge, which where someone has gone into in Indian context or the subcontinent context. And then, of course, that was with given a background of a thriller and technical fiction and classical writing, a mix of three genres in one book. It was kind of experimental in many ways, but that's what happens when you're bursting with a story for 30 years. When you write, it has to be something different. Now, the
Sure.
second book is a crime thriller with a fair amount of what I call, the again descriptive or classical style of writing, which you call at times you may sound like a documentary in some parts by design. So the in selection of the story or the theme, what the way I go about is I always do character sketching first. So for the first novel, when I wrote, I had an annual of about 100 characters which I had sketched, and from there, I picked out 7 or 8 when I went into the writing the book. For the second novel, I had double that number. So wherever I travel, when I meet people or visit places, anyone and everyone that you meet, you make a point, you make a note, and then read about their background, life, and make a character sketch. So even when this book took me 2 years in writing the second book and about 1,800 man writing hours to complete the job. There
Oh,
also the large part of it was, let's say, creating characters which come live to the reader and bring out a background which is as realistic as it existed in the subcontinent. So the first part is, if I may use a word that in many ways, my books are what I call character driven.
character
So
driven.
from the characters I pick out. So the if I yeah. So if you see
Okay.
the second book starts off with the heroine in a
Yes, Alice.
kind of situation wherein she has to what in the
She
Tamil
kills her
terminology what
stepfather.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of called an escape room scenario in today's generation when now children play games. They call it an
Yes.
escape room where you're put in a situation, come out of it. So
Yeah.
this plot is again the whole thing has been worked out. See, the blueprint of this book is there in the first chapter, but the novel as such is with a vast spectrum of geography, time, events, and people, and then of course correlation of time and events to get the intrigue and the thrill going in that.
Okay. Now, you see, the thing is this: faith and the beloved. When somebody has not read the book, from the title, you are giving a promise of positivity, faith and the beloved, because that is the very positive nuances of human mind. But when I go deep, I see the beginning is with a murder. So there is an exploration of dark side of human mind, you know, and that has been very interestingly dealt by Charles Dickens in his Oliver Twist and David Copperfield, where the power of money is challenged by the power of innocence, or the power of innocence is challenged by the power of money. But eventually, I'm not going to disclose the plot of Faith and the Beloved right now, but eventually you move towards a positivity, exploring a journey, with the darker side of mind of human beings. And in our childhood, we were always told crime does not pay. But you chose crime as the central theme of your text. Is it from your personal experience, or is it reading some good authors you were, those who are favorite to you? Or how did you arrive at this genre of crime?
Okay, the first part is, I have stopped reading fiction in 2009 when I started writing. So
Acha.
that was a very, very, very firm decision that when I start writing, I will not be influenced by anything that I read. And I have
Hmm.
not read any fictions from 2009. Now it's almost 12 years when I
Okay.
started. No, so that was deliberately with an intention that you develop a style which is completely individualistic and seen as so. So that was a deliberate choice. The second part is now the whole concept of behavior of individuals is a reflection of his or her value system. And the value system of individuals in, let's say, in the society comes from its family, society, religion, schooling, four main parameters which play an important role in what I call shaping the value system of an individual, be it a he or a her, in a formative years, which is in the first 12 years or 13 years. So the whole concept of value system in a society, in a changing society, and specifically this had come to me when I studied LTT. We had come across LTT problems as men who were serving in uniform. So that war went on for 3 decades. So they had convinced the people who were working for them that it is better to give up your life for the cause than living. No, that is a phenomenal kind of conviction wherein you could have a set of people who are just willing to give up their life and become suicide bombers because they believe that there is more meaning in death than in life. So this, if you look at our, let's say, the judiciary or our legal system that exists today, is with the basic premise that a man values his life, that you punish him if he does something, provided he values his life. Now, if someone says that, my value is that I would like to die, there is no judicial system, there's no law and order, there's nothing that you can do to him. So it is going beyond the parameters of the society. And he has created a value system which motivated people to go outside the parameters of what we call a, let's say, society that we live in. So this concept, when I read about it, when I saw the number of people who are giving up their lives for the cause, kind of stayed with me. As also an event wherein they talk about, there's an event which I described in the book, which is taken off from a real incident which took place. I think it's in '83 in Colombo. There was a case of a family being burned in a car, the parents of a Tamil family, and the children were kept out. And the father from the burning car, he came out, took his children, and preferred that the children die within the car than left to live. Now the question is, the children are very dear to him. So, but in his own wisdom, he believes that because he loves them, he prefers to kill them than being left to the mercy of the mob wherever they would have ended. So one of the characters is built from that. So the book has been an effort to delve into what we call, let's say, value system of individuals and the society, and what happens when you are put in a situation where you have to cross the line. Now, crime in anyone's life is not a nobody is a. When you talk about regular people who are not hardened criminals, it happens maybe once in your lifetime, or it may not happen in your lifetime at all. But there comes a time when you have to cross the line and do something which is normally termed as criminal by the society, but your limited options tell you that maybe in the best interest of the condition that you are in, that particular individual, for his conditions, he believes that is what needs to be done. So, in whilst it is not so much about a crime as a central theme, I would say value system of individuals and the society when there is a clash. So here also, if you see the whole story, if you see that uh, the faith that you have in yourself and in the value system that you follow and the people whom you love, how much are you going to stretch yourself to, let's say, look out for the people whom you love? And what value system you follow, and what happens when the value system of individuals crosses that with the society. That is a theme, not truly, it is not a crime as a central theme. It is a value system as a central theme that I wanted to challenge and portray to the readers. That all of us, in majority of the times, rarely come across situations where you have to cross a line. But there are individuals who put into such situations where you have to cross a line. And then what goes through their mind, rightly or wrongly, I leave that to the readers to be decide what is right and what is wrong. But definitely, I believe given, and I started off in the background where this thought really came into me was when I could see that I could not believe that a terrorist organization could motivate a whole generation of people to give up their life. And they say that when they go outside the ambit of any law or regulation, anything that you do. Which has tried been, of course, it has been followed up by ISIS and things like that, but to a much lesser extent. They do not have the kind of conviction and motivation which LTT had built up. That level nobody's reached, and I don't think anybody will reach either. That level wherein it's phenomenal. The manipulation. I will not say manipulation. Phenomenal influence on the value system of individuals, which makes you do things which you will not do otherwise in your normal walk of life.
Yes, you're talking about these terrorist organizations. They are brainwashing so many young minds, but that is a very organized way of doing a job. But in your case, where Orun, Prem, Alice, all these people, they are very individuals with their own value system. As you said, that sometimes the value system, prompts you to cross the line. But do you think this, in case of Alice, in case of Prem and Orun, if there is another person of a different psyche who has been brought up with a different values, would have reacted in a different way? Like Alice killed her stepfather.
That is definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
Now the whole question.
Yeah, because I personally feel that crime is not really 200% genetic. There is sometimes you become victims of circumstances. For example, I do not know, you have not heard about this true story in Bengal. A 12-year-old boy, Shajol Barui, he killed his father, stepmother, and elder brother with the help of 3 of his friends. So he had the power and intelligence to convince the other 3 friends to join in the murder. And when he was punished, but the judge said that if his intelligence, he was a fantastic painter, he was a poet, and the judge said if his energy, if his intelligence, if his intellect would have been channelized in a different way, he perhaps would have been a very high level creative person, but it was not channelized. So do you think this Alice, Orun and Prem, if they got an opportunity to sort of channelize their energy or other criminal instinct in a different way, they would not have committed this crime?
Possibly. I mean, that is definitely a point of view that I respect.
Yeah.
What you're saying is definitely a good point of view. But let me, like you mentioned, now there is currently a lady from Uttar Pradesh, double postgraduate, the only girl child of parents with 2 brothers, who killed her 2 brothers, her sister-in-law, and her nephew and her parents, because their parents did not agree her to marrying one school dropout boy. And she is today in the death row. She'll be the first woman to be hung. When I read this story in 2010, I think it happened in 2000, I could not believe that a woman, and that too an educated woman, maybe, who's a double postgraduate, would go to the extent of killing her parents, killing her brothers, killing her sister-in-law, children, all because he wanted to marry somebody. Difficult to believe, but initially I thought the whole thing is, motivated, maybe, media malice, things like that. But as things came out, 100% it said she had sedated her whole family, and she and this particular lover came and axed them in the night, one by one. So the whole question there comes that you cannot believe somebody educated of that stage, a double postgraduate girl who was pregnant at that point in time with a child from this boy whom she wanted to marry, will go to this extent of killing a whole family. So the whole question there comes down to that, again, I come back to the same thing. So possibly, if I were to, let's say, I do not know the individual and I do not know the, one will never know the truth as to why she did it. But from a perspective point of view, what is being looked at is say that, she found that, her wish to live with that boy or whatever she wanted to, that life with that boy was more important than all her family. It's again a clash of values system to your own parent. Unbelievable, even today. I mean, she is recently supposed to be, the president's pardon has also been turned down, and she's going to be the first woman who's going to be hung. for this kind of a cold-blooded criminal act. So again, the same question comes. So that's what I said. Let's say when you talked about Arun and Prem, they're also victims of the, let's say, the caste system, which is kind of bane of
Yes.
India's, let's say, the
Yes.
Hindi art.
Yes, that's what I was coming to. Yeah.
So it's a bane of a caste
very
system. So,
brutally treated.
so now the
And
whole
they did
question
not get
is
any,
the caste system.
yes, they did not get any support. Sorry, they did not get any support from the administration. So which sort of left a lot of angst in their mind.
Yes. So that's what I said. So the social issue. So that's what I said. The behavior of the individual is a reflection of all those parameters: family, society, your religion, and your education. So all four put together. So when your social system is like into one extreme, when it goes beyond a certain limit, you cannot expect individual to play by the rule book. So there are a lot of things that have been deliberately done again, because that has been a deliberate effort to bring out the kind of problems that are caused by and how much it actually affects people. Even if it's like saying that, when it's 3 generations down the line, the system is so ruthless, you cannot get out. So it is also to kind of sensitize our today's generation about, let's say, efforts of Dr. Ambedkar and that, Janevu Andolan, which took place in the 1930s, wherein people said, why should only one set of people wear the Janevu? We should also wear. No, there was a kind of, there was a point when Dr. Ambedkar even fell out with Gandhiji for some time on this issue of the caste issues.
Yes.
But of course, Gandhiji prevailed upon him and he came back to the fold. So this issue, which even today in the 21st century, in the police lines of Bihar police line, they still have 3 or 4 separate cook houses for separate people. They work together, but they dine separately. So if that is the state of the police, then what do you expect the things to be in the village? So this was also a deliberate effort to again highlight the issue of unless we educate our people and unless we reform the crude and the mentality of people, we cannot get people out of the morass that they are in. So this was again part as to how the society also plays up, which I think you have correctly pointed out, how the society also plays into the individuals who are given the situations. And second part of it is that when a criminal comes into a setup, which is what the story is about, and plays havoc with, let's say, whether it's a Matahari or a male Matahari, when that kind of even happens, then there are times when the individual is left with no choice. When you get to know that here is a, let's say, devil in sheep's clothing, there are times when you have to cross the line. So that's why again I said, what you said, whilst I agree with you a lot of the things that you said, I have not been trying to be judgmental in my writing. I leave that to the readers. So one effort that I do is all the major characters will have a detailed past, and by which a reader can decide for themselves whether this character is grey, black, or white. I leave the judgment to them. But
yes,
I say when you talk about undervaluable society.
True. And I don't know, a very, very weird idea that is coming to me is that one day in your dreams, if you find that Alice, Arun, and Prem, they appear in your dreams and start asking questions. Why did you make me murder my stepbrother? I don't know. I'm not a killer. Why did you instill that? And this is another kind of thing which can be developed from your storyline. Now, all these characters, do you know them? Are they characters of your milieu? You have seen them, or are they completely figment of your imagination?
All these characters that they're all created. None of them are they're not a lift off or inspired from anybody whom I know personally. All these 4, but a lot of them are lifted off from. That's why I told you the story in Colombo, which I read, which stayed with me. So one story started like that, and about a caste system. When you take there's so many things that you read about the problems and the amount of the bane of the caste system and the amount of problems. It's on a daily basis. You read newspaper, it's almost every week it's there. One killing, one murder in the name of caste system. And it has been going on for decades. So there are a lot of incidents from the newspapers, from the the media, or from the let's say publications that I've read. But none of this is based or inspired on any direct individual who has existed. They were all created.
They're all created.
The characters in that.
And I'll come to the structure a little later, about your structure of the novel, which I find very, very fascinating. But what I want to ask is that all these, there's so many characters. There is Prakash, there is Nakhi, there is Alice, there is Prem, there is Arun. Do you empathize with any of these characters, and you feel sorry for that character, or you feel that if I would have got an opportunity to, have an interaction with this character, I would have channelized him or her in a different way? Since you said
that
it's
is a very interesting question. That's a very no. It is a very interesting perspective. But let me put it like this. When you write the novel, I do accept there are many readers that told me that number of characters are a little too many for some of the readers to handle. That you have to keep track of 7 or 8 characters. It's not easy for them. But having said that, so when you develop a plot which is of this type, because when I started developing the plot, let's say the first chapter has got actually the blueprint of the book, more or less, for a discerning reader. And if the reader is not smart enough, then he or she will have to come back to the first chapter to see where the clue has gone, why they missed out.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
So the challenge was that when I do not really claim that I had one full plot completely laid out and then started writing. So I had a blueprint which was in the first chapter. Then there was a lot of time, space, and events correlation which takes a lot of kind of one is research, and second is what I call time, space, event coordination, so that your story runs without contradicting either in terms of time or in space as you jump forth and back. So the stories have been developed, and that's I said each of the character I have spent a fair amount of time researching his or her background, giving a kind of descriptive or documentary kind of background, which normally is not part of a traditional thriller genre. Thriller does not get so much into background of individuals. This is more like a classical style of writing, but I prefer to do that because when you create a character, you have to create a character, define him or her the way he or she is. Then that the character moves through the book, and there is a certain transition which takes place, or catharsis which takes place through let's say, the development of the book from beginning to the end. So the effort has been to give, again, I said, to have characters which are live, and a lot of research has gone into it, a lot of research to make sure that when you talk about, and then link to actual events, LTT, LTT operations, your 2611, your demonetization, or various events which have happened in a subcontinent. And another way of telling our people is also that, it is not that, thrillers don't happen in a subcontinent. There are enough events which are happening in a subcontinent, just that, nobody's put pen to paper to put them together and tell you as a story. And you are as much international with LTT, which had its wings spread all over the world. And even today, with your, the events which take place, there is also a certain aspect which tells you that the characters that you see in the novel, not all readers will like all the characters, and I do not expect them to. For me as an author, I've created all of them. They're equally good or equally favorite. All of them are equally, my favorites. I have no particular, let's say, my favorite character or not favorite. No. I leave that to the reader.
But I personally quite liked Prem and Alice. Both of them I quite liked, and I would have loved to meet them if I ever get an opportunity. Arun is very interesting. I'll come to Arun a little later, because I do not know why you have sort of given Arun that kind of knowledge or that kind of insight of quoting epic, that I'll come to a little later. But before that, I think that viewers also would like to know that we are getting this absolutely in the shelf, buying the book, reading it. But behind it, it's a process that has gone, as you said, 2.5 years. It is not easy. It's a journey.
Yes.
And in that journey, I'm sure you got disappointed. Sometimes you were quite eureka kind of thing. Now I've got it. And also subjectivity, objectivity, you keep on balancing. So would you like to share your journey with the author when you wrote this Faith in the Beloved, where you had a stumble block or you didn't have any stumble block, where you kept the writing for, in kind of hold for 1 week? What was the process like? What kind of agony and ecstasy you went through? What kind of subjectivity and objectivity you balanced?
So actually, in many ways, for the people from the defense background will understand the initial preparation for the book was something like preparing for a war game. In the sense, war game is a thing wherein you prepare for months together, where there's so many details. Million people this side, million people that side, and a lot of handling of data, place, and time, and people, etc. So initially, when you're, let's say, you have done the character sketching, and when I used to have a big whiteboard on which I used to write, character, time, event, and it is by the time you're, about let's say, not even one third into the book, it's like a big jigsaw puzzle. So in many ways, I compare writing to, I have said this before also in some of the forums, that it's something like, for someone who's familiar with cricket, those who play cricket in the beginning and you go to bat, your bowler comes to bowl, you don't see the ball, you see only the bowler, and then you take a guess and swing your bat. If it hits, it hits. If it doesn't hit, it doesn't hit. If you play it long enough, there comes a time when you actually see the ball, and then you're able to see the ball and then hit it. You play a little longer, then you're able to see the complete field, the fielders, and hit it where you want. So in many ways, for me, the writing of the book has been like this, that the initial stages when you write, you do not have a complete grip of the full characters, plot, and events. Till you reach maybe about one third of the book, or in this particular case, it is about halfway along, that suddenly I had the complete thing in my mind. Okay, I knew who was where. It just falls into place one day. Till that, yes, I agree with you that each time you take a blackboard, you got a big whiteboard in which you're writing this character there, that character here, and then you're saying, okay, where did that fellow go? Then it's okay, this has gone wrong. So somewhere your time is out. And second is when you want to give credible research, that if I tell someone that okay, I'm talking about, let's say, Gambia, or an event which takes place in a country called Gambia. So that's a place which I visited.
Gambia.
And
What is that? Gambian is what is that?
Gambia is a city, country in West Africa.
Oh, Zambia.
Where the slave trade started.
Oh, Zambia you're talking about. Okay, I thought. Okay.
Not Zambia. Okay. No. Gambia starts with G for God. Gambia.
Okay, G. Okay.
Gambia is a very small country south of Senegal on the west part of Africa. That colony owned by Britishers, and that's a place from where the slave trade started. So I had traveled to that place as part of my work, and talked to some of the people. And when you hear the stories, and you see the place, they have a memorial there where how the slaves used to be captured and kept, and how they used to be shipped in the boat. When you read about it, you almost kind of fall apart. The kind of that they cannot believe that human beings could do this to another set of human beings, where they were just herded in like shapes, put into a cage, locked up, and they will throw in water on the floor. They used to pee and poo in the floor, and they would lick off water, to drink, mixed with the urine and crap. And one third of them died. That those who died were just thrown at sea, and those who lived went to America and then did whatever work they were doing. So when you see such places, that is one of the deliberately that place was brought in deliberately to bring in that aspect of the 200 years of slavery and what kind of injustice has been given to them. And I had met one, let's say, a lady there who during traveling was working with the UN, and who said that they should be compensated. If you have made them work free for you for 200 years, if the America calls it in the respective society, they must compensate them. So that's a different angle which has come into it. So when you write and write with such a watch spectrum, yes, I do agree. There were many points wherein you held back, and then you're pausing for some time to steer the plot. Then you take the events, and there have been many iterations that went through. Of course, towards the end, with the author, with the editor on board, when the editor tells you, okay, this is not okay, that's okay. So it's a fairly iterative process, and very detailed and very, like you said, it's a lonely journey. Nobody else can help you. It's all in your mind.
Absolutely.
So till you complete the thing and give it to the editor, and it's a lonely journey. Yes. And every day to take out, I used to spend about necessarily 2 to 3 hours every day, 5 days a week on this. So as you progress somewhere about, halfway through the book, till you get it clear in your mind, half the time you go in orienting yourself. You left yesterday, and today when you start look at the board, okay, so this is this. So then to get your mind to that point where you left off the previous day itself, it should take me 1 hour. So you lose out of the 2 hours that you're writing, 1 hour went in that. So 1 hour you start writing. Till you reach that point, like I told you, when you get a grip of the whole thing in your mind, then yes, from there onwards, that your journey becomes a little easier. But otherwise,
Yeah.
it's a very lonely journey, and nobody can walk the path for you. You got to walk it yourself.
In that lonely journey, what was the percentage of despair and joy balancing?
Despair, fortunately, no. That
No.
that word,
Okay.
okay, but no, despair, no. But what I call is it is not so much a
Agony,
I would say challenge each time, not agony.
challenge.
I will call it a challenge. So
Yeah.
each time that's a military way of looking at things. You find an obstacle, it's a challenge. You don't call it an agony or so you always call it a challenge. So this is one challenge for you. So it does come. So like for example, I was writing about, and then there's a bringing in hacking into this, delving into, let's say, how does somebody become a hacker? How do they go about doing it? So that's an area which I had not worked on previously. So then it took me for to write that whatever 2-3 pages. It took me about 5-6 months to talk to people, do research, then talk to some actual hackers to know that what
Yeah.
you're writing is you're able to convey the pulse of what you're writing. So
Okay.
then one thing like that. So it's just it is not. It's only 2-3 pages in that book, but you want it to be credible. That what you write when someone reads, they should feel that it is as credible as anything else that is written. Or let's say there's a
Yeah.
talk about the game children play these days. The online games they play and how it is controlled and how it can be manipulated. So a lot of the areas where the research is not easy, where a lot of stretching out happens.
Okay. You just a glass of a little bit of water. Yeah. Now, see, the thing is, time is very short. I've got so many things to know from you, learn from you. I'm very, very curious to know that what is the demographics of your readers? Are they young readers or they above 45, 50? What is the major percentage of your readers? Do they call
Major
you? Do they
percentage.
so?
Many of them speak to me on, let's say that you have interaction on the Instagram. I have a page, so many of them do come up.
Yeah.
Those who read the book, they ask many queries. So that is okay. So some of them have objected to saying that some of them have taken offense and they're like that there has been to say that unless you read and understand the book, that's one of the challenges which they've told me that if you're it says it's too difficult for a normal individual to digest so much of data and then keep pace with what you've written.
Yeah.
For that, I have no answer for that. It has to be a discerning reader. I agree that it's not easy for all the readers to keep track of so many characters, events, and keep pace. And second is, many of them were not happy with them. So much of, let's say, details about LTT or demonetization, or let's say the 2611 attacks, which are all built into the background. But the readers go from 18 upwards to any age. That there is
Any age.
no. I've
There is
had
no kind
response
of
from across the
specific.
board.
No. Okay. And
No.
another thing is this is regarding the structure of your Faith and the Beloved. You have written a novel. It's a fiction, but it is divided into a short story format. Each chapter has a character's name and there is a story. So if you read it separately, Alice, Prem, all those, they are all different stories, but there is a link. Why did you choose this, segmentation format and not the run-on novel like other novelists?
So actually, there are two sides to that. One in this writing, actually, I have opted for a non-linear kind of writing. So when you go from one chapter to the second chapter, time is not linear. So
Yeah.
book
Yes.
starts with 1930, the next guy is in
Yes.
2018,
Yes.
third chapter
Yes.
starts maybe another 20 years back. So that
Yes.
was deliberately when you play with time like that, it's difficult to have let's say continuous running because you're changing time. So that has been deliberately done because the first 5-6 chapters are dealing with various characters and they're all in various timelines, various geographies. So that was deliberately done specifically because it's a non-linear writing. Otherwise, it's very tough. So one book starts off with, let's say, the first book starts off with, starting at 2018. Second will go back maybe 20 years. Next one will, go back another 20 years, goes to 70. So the timelines have been different and by choice. That has also been another challenge for me, that when you're writing, because so much of when you're moving back and forth in time. So again, the reader needs to keep his or her wits about, so that they don't get lost in the timeline. Some of them did interact with me also and said that they couldn't figure out why so much of in a non-linear narration, because then I said that's how the story is structured. That that those events, unless they cross path, accepting at that point in time, they were in different timelines, their life, and it's only when they cross that events come around to the focal point at the end.
And each section is complete in itself. Even if I don't read the other chapter, I get some plot. It's not that I'll have to go through. And if I decide to continue reading, it's the reader's responsibility to sort of weave the thread and go back and forth and connect the pieces. Like first chapter, Alice's stepfather gets killed, and we get to know about Alice's real father's death much later. So this is something you'll have to shift from here and there. Now that is absolutely, I found it very, very fascinating. Now here, what I told you regarding Orun, do you know the difference between Ramayana and the Mahabharata? Orun asked, looking intently at Prem. Prem did not respond. He knew his brother would come up with some pearls of wisdom. Ramayana is all about living by the letter of the law. Mahabharata is about living by the spirit of the law. So is this Orun or is this Shibu?
First of all, everything in the book is Shibu. that is okay.
How much you worked here?
So no. So here the what I am saying here is, Iron has come from a background. He's a very sharp guy. He had done in his schooling, college. He was a bright star. So he had that very analytical and very well educated bent of mind. So what we are telling here is that if you see his actions, his background, without spilling the story, there's a reason that some injustice has been done to him. He has been kicked out of his village for no fault of his. Now, when he comes out with all this wisdom of knowledge, which he had, and he has taken a path which is not very, very, what we call against the social norms, what he has decided to do, his own way of getting back at, the society and whatever injustice has been done to him. So, whilst we show him as completely, one side of him is, completely, let's say, gray or black, we are also telling him that he is not just another, it's not just another run-of-the-mill guy. He is a sharp guy who is understood, and he is pretty well read. Not only one, there are a couple of other things also which he says, discerning things. So what that means is also that, let's say, there is one more comparison is about, the Eklavya story, on how that perception is. This is actually, I've heard it from people like this. When you speak to Eklavya story, I've had somebody from, let's say, the Hindi heartland who asked me this question. He said, the discrimination against Dalits started from then. Acharya Drona was keeping us out because he didn't want us to empower us. So this is something which I've come across in actuals. I mean, in conversation with people where they say, when it's the Eklavya story, the guy takes back. He says, no, it is nothing to do with what you're saying is pure, let's say the discrimination towards the Dalits. It is going on for centuries now. He says, you go back 2000 years also, it is still there. So this is again a reflection of, how people see the same event. There's a perception to it depending on who's sitting where and how it is given. That is from that point of view.
Okay. Now, also in Alice, what I find Alice, Prem, Orun, somewhere they are very pure souls. Some of them are committing crimes, and they are also very, what should I say, superficially, we should not judge them, because as I said, he talks about Ramayana and Mahabharata, and Alice holding mother's hands, looking at the stars from the world of deceit, this transportation to this ethereal world. Does it say life at the end of the day has divine quality. I mean, she does it with mother and looks, she asks about her father. So there is a divinity in her, in Alice. And also the name is very pure, very angelic, Alice. It's not Nancy or Margarita, you know. So that phonetically also it gives a kind of angelic kind of character to this girl. I mean, what is your take on that?
Yeah, sure.
When she holds the,
That is by design, because that means, see, what we are telling here is a, it's like, that's another thing that when I'm trying to say, that here, let's say that here is a, when the book starts with a, let's say, young girl in an escape room in a situation wherein she has crossed the line, and all because, as a, when you read the book, you'll realize as to why she ended up in that kind of an environment where she's left with no options but to come out of it in a way she said she could come out, which is starts off the whole chain of events and what happens after that. Second is that, as much as I say, when you say faith and the beloved, so now here we are saying that they have been, their family has been thrown asunder because she lost her father in that, let's say 26/11 attack. And all children, that you're losing a parent can be very traumatic, and they always look forward to, even after the death. That's a tradition in India. If you talk to people, you say someone died, is a star there, is a, if you look at it, that must be your grandfather, that must be your father. So in that concept, people believe that there's a belief in the subcontinent that there is a certain amount of divinity, that even after death could be, maybe you're there or you're here. So that aspect has been brought out because, again, people need to believe in something. And that question from, let's say, from a children's point of view, will always be there, to know that even if your father has died, he'll be there out looking out for you from the heavens, blessing you or trying to help you out. From that point of view, yes, I agree. What you're saying is right.
yes, and also when you chose this title, Faith and the Beloved, did you choose it after completing the fiction writing, or did you choose it right at the beginning? When did you decide to
It
give it
was after the
name?
first three chapters.
After first three
No,
chapters?
the name was after the first three chapters.
Yes,
Chapters, yes.
because it's again
So
upholding
it was,
positive that was
initially I had a little churning.
okay. Okay. Now, since it is almost an hour, I think we'll have to wind up in spite of the fact that we could have carried on and on. The last paragraph I'll read. Nancy had decided that Alice would join a university in the US for her undergraduate studies. They would sit on the terrace of their new house in Cochin at night. As Alice held her mother's hand and looked at Arundhati and Vashishta's, she wondered if her father would still be looking out for them. Now, this ending, did it come when you are writing, or you thought of such a positive ending at the beginning and wrote it in a back calculation manner?
No, this actually came about at the end. There was a
At
lot
the
of
end.
iteration which took place at the end, because there were many options that was considered. The last, that the what came after that one chapter took me some time, because when you write something, when you reflect on it, and when you discuss with the, let's say, editor, though ending has seen many iterations, then I thought it was by design, but it did not. It was not planned from the beginning to write like that. No, it was after completing the book, that, because what came after was written well after the book was written. The last one, the, because you read the book, you wrote the book, and kind of rounded it off 2-3 times. Then only it came to this, and on the final ending. It was not thought of from the beginning. No, it was after writing, and it comes like writing the blurb and the last chapter. Blurb went through around 20-21 iterations, because that
Yes,
blurb is another challenge. As was the what came after. What you call that epilogue. It takes a
yes,
lot of thinking and a lot of writing to summarize what you have said, and to kind of finish it philosophically. I mean, so that is by design, because I believe in that. When you talk about faith, it has to end in faith.
yes, because faith is a kind of, it's one's personal kind of feeling. Your faith, my faith. Shushru's faith, Mona's faith is completely built on different premises, different perceptions and perspectives. Now, I think the last thing I'd like to know that have you thought of not a sequel as such, but you have dealt with very young people. All these people are very young. Alice, Prem, Arun. Have you thought of any other plot or any other story, where we will see similar characters completely in a different kind of premise, where there will be a complete paradigm shift in your plot structuring?
Actually, I am working. I mean, there are many stories churning in my mind. I will be starting my next book by the end of the year, hopefully. So, the first two books, were, kind of trying out. Yes, I will be looking at, structuring something a little different in the next book. I will bear this in mind. Let me see how the thing goes. In my case, it's always, when I, like, my character sketching is going on. When I start writing, it's only as I write along that the story develops. But yes, I take your point. There is a lot of scope for, giving a paradigm shift to this whole setup.
Yes, yes. Why I'm saying that I have a lot of things which I might share later because we don't have time here. That there is a very positive role of a psychoanalyst of all these characters, who is not there in the book, but that person can one by one, if they go for therapy, a lot of things can be unearthed which is not in the book. I'm thinking as an extension of, this for the discussion, not for writing.
Yeah, understood. I understood.
Yeah, so that is
sure.
it.
I understood what you're saying. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, because I was thinking that if Arun, I don't know why you killed Arun. Why did you kill Arun? Did you have to kill him?
So, this was, no, it was not. Like I told you, I have not been judgmental in what. That is basically to bring about a reality in our society. Now, that's a sensitive topic because, let's say, we have adapted a British legal system into a society. Let's say traditionally, if you say the rape is punishable by 7 years. Now, which is, if you see the amount of humiliation that a woman has to go through to fight a rape case, the 7 years for somebody who doesn't care, doesn't matter anything at all. So there has been if you remember the Nirbhaya case which took place, and there was so much of hue and cry about it. So then one does feel that the reality is that if you really want to deal with this kind of rapists, maybe you have to follow the encounter path. You're sure somebody has done it, because the other solution which our legal system and given the challenges, it's so traumatizing for any kind of victim that they would not go through it. So this was to bring out that point, to say that there are times again. So there also what let's say the protagonist, what she has done is she has decided, okay, he has crossed the line, so I will also cross the line in a different way. So the whole question is it's in many ways in life, when you cross a line, it always comes with consequences. So that is from where that has been brought out like that.
Yes, and many of these characters have been oppressed. It's not that they are born criminals. It's out of some circumstances they are reacting in that fashion. As you said at the beginning of the session, that it's absolutely one's own situation, how he crosses the line and how he does not cross or she does not cross the line. So that's why I was very, because Arun is talking about Asatthama, Arun is talking about Mahabharata, Arun is talking about Ramayana, and Arun also says a very beautiful line to his brother, that he says that how relevant it's. I'll just read out that Arun says, you must simply study hard. That is the only way to rise in life. That is the only way to rise in life. So he had that positive value in him. He had that knowledge. He had that, understanding of epics, which is a very, very deep-rooted philosophy, both of them. And you killed him. So I'm not happy with that. So I wanted to remain alive for a few more chapters, and some pearls of wisdom we would have got from you.
Of
So,
course, that part I accept, I guess. So
yeah,
that's the writer's
absolutely.
challenge. That part I accept. That's the writer's challenge. I do agree because this was a point which I also kind of pondered a long, long time on this particular, this episode where, because you brought up Arun from a certain background with a certain traits, and he has come up like this. Yes, I did face a lot of challenge at that point in writing. That is one of the areas where I did think a lot to know whether you should, like you said, you should go here or should you be there for a few more chapters. But a lot of
Yeah,
iteration took place. So it is, like I told you, it is written over a period of 2 years. At that point in time, we thought that this is how it should go. But I accept
yeah,
what you said, because even I had this, when you bring in so much of knowledge in one guy and you just write him off, it
absolutely.
can burn the hearts of
I would,
many readers.
yeah,
I accept that. I
absolutely.
accept that.
Yeah,
But that,
absolutely.
like you said, like you brought out rightly, that's one of those challenges. I didn't call it an agony. It was one of those challenges which I had faced.
Yeah,
Yes,
true.
definitely.
And your next writing, I would like to see not necessarily a woman, but it can be a man, but preferably a woman psychoanalyst. If you write this kind of things, and there will be kind of, you have departed at places from the story and very given very objective narrative and then came back to the story. So that can be from the point of view of a psychoanalyst. I don't know. This is what I was thinking I will share with you. And thank you very much, Shibu. It was a
Sure,
wonderful,
sure. That's a
wonderful
good suggestion.
kind of discussion we had, and I got to know you much better, and I will know you because I will share mails and we can keep in touch in future. And since it's already more than 1 hour, I think, yeah. So for the time being, we'll have to say
Sure, sure. Okay.
bye to the viewers. I know that it could have continued for another half an hour, 45 minutes, but I don't want to tax the brain of the viewers with unfaith and unbeloved. So let them remain in
Okay.
faith and the beloved. Thank you very much, Shivu. Thank you.
Thank you, Biplav.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah.
Thank
The
you.
we'll disconnect.